Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Senate 8 and Friends Town Hall. I'm your reluctant host, Dan Osman. Let's just go down the line. We're going to have brief introductions from everybody, and then we can just start with questions because that's really it. We're not here to talk. We're here to listen and find out what your concerns are.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yay, me. Hi, everyone. My name is Representative Heather Meyer. I represent Overland Park, District 29, which is just on the other side of 69 Highway, roughly between 99th and 135th, sort of between 69 and Metcalf. Dan and I have some little spots down there towards the south end. Eventually, my name might change to McCormick, but it's still going to be on the ballot as Heather Myers, so don't worry about that. But I recently got divorced, so I just wanted to tell you all that. We are working on that, so if somebody up here calls me McCormick Meyer, it's just out of good fun and love. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good morning. I'm Representative Linda Featherston. We are in my district. This is the north end of the district, and we go down to 127th Street. It's door knocking season, so that's what I'm doing is I'm out in the district knocking doors, hearing from people, and just encouraging people to get out to vote. Once we get past the primary, then I will be out supporting other House reps in an effort to flip the supermajority so we can have better balance in the legislature.
Hello, I'm Dan Osman. I'm representative for District 48. That one starts at about 119th Street and goes to 159th Street, Schweitzer to Metcalf. So it's a nice zigzag pattern. I'm in my third term, running for my fourth term, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So excited that you're here on a Saturday morning when there are so many other things to do. I'm Representative Mary Lynn Poskin. I represent Kansas House District 20, which is Leawood and Overland Park, basically 95th to 135th state line to Mission as a really great rectangle, and then 103rd to 127th Mission to Metcalf. So I also am just finished my third term, and I'm running for my fourth term, and I'm really, really honored to be trusted with this work in these divisive times. So I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm going to do a short introduction to the gentleman on my left here. This is Brian Mober, and he is running in House District 28, which is just south of me. And I would say, quite a few of us have experienced flipping districts. And so House District 28, you probably know, we came within 60 votes of flipping in 2022, and Brian's just going to finish it up in 2028. And one of the things I think is important is we call this town hall Senate 8 and Friends, and some people are like, well, how do you get to be a friend, right? And what that basically means is the Senate district is the larger district of about 66,000 folks, and our House districts are about 22,000. And so the Friends part is any House district that has any precincts in Senate District 8, and you have not seen somebody from House District 28 before because they refuse invitations to have town halls. So I will actually let Brian introduce himself real quick, and then we'll get back down to Representative Clayton.
That's me. I am Brian Mober. I'm running for House District 28. This is a eminently flippable district, and I hope I am the person to do it. I am a novice candidate drinking from a fire hose, learning more than I ever thought I would about what is important to voters. I have the level of knowledge and involvement of a very concerned citizen and a concerned parent of one Blue Valley student and one former Blue Valley student who's at KU. But I am learning just as much from you guys who show up and have issues that are important to you in this district than I ever could learn on my own. I am happy to talk to you all and learn about what's important to you as I begin this very, very, very long and busy journey. And I thank you for coming out here. It amazes me to see people do this, and I'm proud of the people who live in my district and the Democrats and Republicans who participate in these sort of forums.
Hello, everyone. I apologize. I am Representative Stephanie Sawyer Clayton. I represent House District 19, which is from Metcalf to State Line, 83rd to 103rd. Although, if you are east of Mission Road, the southernmost boundary is 95th, and the northernmost boundary is Somerset. So I've had the privilege of representing you all since my election in 2012. And so proud to have that opportunity to do that. I am currently the vice chair of our Rules Committee, which is does parliamentary procedure. It's the only bipartisan committee where the chair is the majority party and the vice chair is the minority party. Usually it's a chair and vice chair from the majority party and then a ranking minority member. I'm also the ranking minority member on our Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development Committee. I'm a member of the Tax Committee, and I am the member of the Federal and State Affairs Committee. Part of the reason why I'm late is that I have this my library books are always overdue. So if I want to check out another one, I have to bring it up to them and have them scan it in. But I would recommend it. It's called Hissing Cousins. It is the untold story of Eleanor and Alice Roosevelt. So one Democrat from the Democratic side of the Roosevelts, and then Alice Roosevelt, who was Theodore Roosevelt's oldest daughter from his first wife. Some of you might remember okay, I really need to not get too nerdy on this. In any case, delightful, remarkable women. And Alice coined the phrase, if you don't have anything nice, then come sit next to me. So it gets credit from Steel Magnolias, but it actually comes from Alice Roosevelt. So I made you learn something, but we're in a library. So I look forward to your questions. And I will mention that I will be on your ballot. If you are a Democrat, I'll show up on your ballot unopposed, and I sure do hope to have your vote there. And then I will be on the November ballot. And so definitely hope to have your support there. I have an opponent, but it's the same person that ran 2 years ago, and I'm fine with that. It is currently a free country, and I feel like we should have the opportunity to always run and earn the spot every time. So I will be running for my 8th term. Thank you for having me here this morning.
We're taking questions at this point. Anybody have anything?
Oh, yeah.
This will be a short form if you don't. So
Rob Bruce from Leawood. I'm in Maryland's district, but I've been in Stephanie's for years and years.
yeah, before redistricting, I'm sorry to lose you.
Right. Yeah, we lost for a little square mile or whatever. The school cell phone ban, it needs to be kind of tweaked a little bit. Is there anything we can do about that? Because, for instance, I got 2 Shawnee Mission students, one's in band at South, and they scan their coordinate cards for band into their phones because they lose all their little index card size coordinate cards. And, back in my day, 40 years ago, we had a huge legal size sheet of paper with everything on it. And now they're customized for each band kid. I know that in DeSoto, they skipped paper altogether, and the coordinate cards are now just on their phones. And you can even get, my day we put paper on our marching lyres. There's this little holder for a phone you can put right there on your horn now, and march with that. That's just one example, but what can we do to make that a little bit more relaxed so that we can, use devices for purposes like that?
Well, so I can speak to this both as a Shawnee Mission South parent. My son is a rising junior. I guess that's what they say. I used to say going into 11th grade, but I try to keep up with the times. And I am also a substitute teacher. So I spend a great deal of time teaching in Shawnee Mission schools, mostly older kids, because I have a low voice and I sound kind of mean and I don't want to scare anyone. But in any case, so this law is supposed to be implemented by the Shawnee Mission School District. I imagine they will have varying exceptions for certain things. Honestly, I guess the law says that you are not supposed to have your cell phones, earbuds, watches, etc. from bell to bell. Although, and again, I don't want to speak to what the school board does. I voted no on the bill because I don't like to tell my school board what to do because they know what to do. I will say this, that as a parent who supports, I mean, I don't want my kid having their phone out during class, but I support my child having his phone on his person or in the little shoebox. But basically, bottom line is that I kind of think that that is the building principals will sort of figure out a way to do that. Cause like, what's the state going to do? Like come after them? Like, this is a stick up. Give me all your cell phones. You know, we can barely competently balance a budget. I really doubt that there will be money or resources for the state to, you know, lead these strikes. But I guess the thing is that this is more of a Dr. Dane and a Shawnee Mission Board of Education thing. And, you know, my guess is that it's not going to be as, I don't know, like fully implemented as the law says, just simply because it's logistically impossible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also a parent of a Shawnee Mission School District kiddo and one who recently graduated and also voted against this bill. It was way too overarching. We need to make sure that our school districts and our building principals are making these decisions. And honestly, I think we're going to have to continue working with our school districts and our building principals to figure this out. It just does not make any sense, period. I mean, for the example that you gave, and then I've gotten emails from students in the district, I've gotten emails from parents in the district, all varying different reasons why they disagree with this bill. And that was prior to it passing and after. And going into the school year, I think people are having a lot of heartache and stomachache about it because we just don't know what to expect. Bell to bell ban just is not realistic. It's not a good idea. And we've got to continue working with them on figuring that out. But I do think that we could go back next session and try to find a way to make some adjustments and actually listen to the districts and what they're asking for. But regardless, I probably still wouldn't support it. I just don't believe in it. I think that, at the lower age grade levels, it makes sense, right? We don't want our elementary school kids having cell phones. Most of them don't, as it is. But when we're talking about high school level kids, for reasons like yours, for other reasons like school shootings and other things like that, our kids want to have their phones on them. And for people like myself, even, I don't know how it's going to work into like a 504 plan, but I've had type 1 diabetes since I was a little thing. I was 11 years old, and I do everything for my diabetes from my phone, my insulin pump, my CGM, everything. These kids are going to be othered also if they're the ones allowed to have their phones in the classroom. And so, what is typically an invisible, disability to most is now going to be something that you can see everywhere. And kids are going to get jealous and they're going to say, well, why does so and so get to have their phone when I don't, when they're handling all of their medical needs on their phone? So, I mean, that's just another reason. There are countless reasons why this was a bad idea. But again, I think we just need to keep working with our school districts and our building principals and administration to figure out a real solution.
This bill came through the committee on which I sit, and I can't tell you how much time and energy I wasted fighting against the governor, some people in our own party, and a large number of legislators who have toddlers and grown children who never had a cell phone in school. This bill is a perfect example of what happens when leadership does not consult in with any professionals or any committee members to craft policy. We did have a slightly better policy in the House that would have allowed the phones to be like in your backpack and off, and I think might have allowed some instructional exceptions. But Ty Masterson ruled that bill fundamentally altered when we returned it to the Senate and killed it. And we ended up with the bill we have, which also does some pretty ominous things about giving benefits to private schools that they don't currently have. And I'm not sure anybody completely understands what that is, but if Ty Masterson stuck it in the bill, that's probably a good indication it's not good. So you will now get my soapbox speech that I give every time this bill comes up. When my child was in middle school, she had a phone for the first time, and there was a tornado warning. And my child was texting me, "Mom, I'm scared." A tornado warning is nothing compared to a school shooter. 2 of the 3 districts I represent, those high schools have had a gun incident in not the far passed recently. I think it was just 2 years ago at South. That is terrifying. And I will tell you, I will never stand in the way of a child being able to text or call their parent for what could be the last time. And that may feel dramatic, but the first time we heard this bill was the day of the Chiefs parade. That's the one day I didn't bring my phone to committee. And when I came back, I had probably 50 messages back and forth in our caucus. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because a number of legislators were able to come to the parade. And these things are real. And if we cannot make schools safe for our children, I am not going to take away their one line of defense or connection. And when people want to say, oh, you can't, it'll be chaos if all these kids have their phones out. I would like to point out there are a number of families in Uvalde, Texas, who would disagree. And that phone was the connection they had to getting help. So that's my Debbie Downer. I have been thinking recently about how we write a bill to repeal this bill, like right out of the gate, repeal it. I think it's still legislative overreach to say that districts must have a policy, which, by the way, the vast majority of our districts did. But I could compromise to say they must have a policy that has some boundaries. But I cannot and I will not ever support this. And I think it's going to be a hard year. And I think teachers are going to be like the phone police. I don't know, who's going to take that teacher duty to frisk every kid for their phone when the school day starts? And if it's the SRO, does that establish good relationships between law enforcement and children? No, it's a disaster. And it's a terrible, terrible idea.
And it's above their pay grade. We don't pay them enough to do this.
So I voted against this bill, but I will say that there's one good thing that came from it, which is that my two daughters became the most civically active kids I've ever seen. One of them, my 15-year-old, printed out the proposed legislation as we were debating it, read through it line by line, and came to me as like, this doesn't make sense. What's going on here? To say I was proud is an understatement. The conversations that we had at the dinner table, I'm like, this is why we need to get involved and have more discussions. So I would say the solution to this, unfortunately, right now, the law is the law. But school goes back into effect, at least in Blue Valley, on August 13th. We have until January to sort of collect the evidence of what's working, what's not working, and fix this in January with actual concrete data from the ground level.
Well, not to beat a dead horse or anything, but I also voted no. Absolute overreach. We have our Constitution outlines who has duties for running schools and so forth, and we have duly elected school board members, state board members, who are closer to their districts, who know their districts better. And I'm just going to recount, if Representative Osmond didn't say it, I was going to say it is the law, and it can't be revisited until January at the earliest. And actually getting a bill, so changing the actual law could be interesting. I will say, I want to just recount the story. I'm on the K-12 Budget Committee, and the day after we voted on the bill, we had our annual, well, at least for the last 2 or 3 years, our annual, meet school board members from across the state and bring them into K-12 and let them explain what's going on, what do we like, what do we don't like. And we had a 28-year school board member come in and explain how difficult the bill would be for them because they had a cell phone ban in their district, and they actually had just tweaked it in December to allow their students who are dual enrolled in college courses, because this was, tell me where it was. Washington County, sorry, straight north of us. He said, that now this wouldn't let them do that. And let me tell you, what it would do is allow those students who had dual credit to bring their personal computers, because their Chromebooks can't connect to the college websites. They could check out their computer for a study hall or whatever to work on their classes. And I will tell you that the chair, the vice chair, well, not the vice chair, sorry, the chair and 2 very prominent members of the K-12 committee did not understand the bill they had voted on the day before. Representative Megan Steele went, our bill only covers cell phones. It doesn't cover personal devices, blah, blah, blah. 3 of the members of that committee said things that were false about the bill. And Leah Fleiter from the School Board Association literally had to be recognized in the room to read the bill to the members who had just voted on it the day before. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this bill, but I was so angry. I was sitting next to a school board member, and I just said, if you're not mad right now. Anyway, so we all at this table agree that the bill is unworkable. It's government overreach, and it is going to be interesting to see what goes on. And one of the things that will help us is if you can recount to us the difficulties that you and your children encounter with how the bill gets implemented. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Well,
You still got something to say? I wasn't there. I would not have voted for the bill. I will relay half of a personal story that my daughter used her cell phone in middle school to call me extremely distraught. That allowed me to go up there and talk to her, and it would have been horrible had that not been able to occur. I will not say because she is still in school, but she will be taking her cell phone to school. It is up to, I think, all of us as parents to contact the school boards because the bill, I think, as passed is quite badly written. There's no penalty in there. And so your school board, the penalty for students bringing cell phones to school could be bringing a lollipop to the teacher, and that complies with the bill. So making clear to your school board, your school principal, what you think of the bill and what you think the mild or not so mild penalty should be would be very helpful. That's my opinion of it. I think, I don't know what the chances are next year of getting it repealed. I know I have written, just as a parent, my school board and said, I think the penalty should be very mild. I think there should be better exceptions for people. I find it hard to believe that it's an MD or a DO who needs to write a letter to get your child to actually be able to keep a cell phone. It's unclear to me from the language of the bill whether they then need a 504 plan because of that letter, which I can't imagine the cost of that. But it's a poorly written bill. It was badly thought out. I'm surprised that they don't have a bill banning comic books. There are many distractions for kids, and focusing on one seems a little more fear-mongering than was absolutely necessary.
Before we get to the next question, I'll just say this. We will have a new governor next year. We will have every single one of the 125 members of the Kansas House are up for re-election. We will have a new House next year. What that looks like is dependent upon the people of Kansas.
We'll have a new speaker too.
Shucky darn. I have seen some political ads saying that that taxes were lowered and there was property tax relief. Did that happen in the last legislature?
Barely, not as much as I would like, absolutely. Others can speak more eloquently on the tax situation, but I will say this, like all of us, every single one of us that ran back in 2024 heard from our constituents that property tax relief was the number one issue. And all of us went into it this year saying, let us fix property tax, which includes what's going on at the state, working with county governments, working with municipalities to try to fix it. And what ended up happening, short story long, is that the House and the Senate, just the Republicans in the House and the Senate, fought with each other all session long and got nowhere, and we did nothing.
I will say that knocking doors in 24, sorry to contradict, that was not an issue. It was very rare. And I knocked 1,900 doors throughout the entire county because I was unopposed. Was it 2 years ago? We got rid of the 1.5 mils that funds university maintenance and public building maintenance. So for all of you who remember my stories of the leaky roof in the music building at K-State, where my daughter attended with her $1 zillion violin in the lockers underneath that, that's a problem. And yes, the bill that passed said, don't worry, we will backfill it. You have to backfill it. I am telling you, do not trust the legislature on those things if things get tough. The thing we could do is fully fund special education, because I live in Shawnee Mission. Half of my tax bill goes to bond issues here in Shawnee Mission, which I am happy to support every day of the week. And roughly 30% of that, which would come to $500-600 on my property tax bill a year, goes to back fund special ed. This little window dressing done 2 years ago saves people in my district about $50 a year. So perhaps if we followed the law and fully funded special education and stopped placing unfunded mandates on our county government, there would be the tiny one we passed this year, is that the county government can now charge more for processing your license tag so they're not losing money on every tag. But Representative Clayton's on tax.
Yes, and so as a pretty longtime member of the tax committee, I will tell you that what Representative Osmond said was true. A lot of this is due to political infighting. One of the problems is, and so again, the area that I represent is a little bit more northeast, and I have constituents whose house payments, their mortgage payments, are going up to, $500 extra a month. I don't know about you, but I have a heck of a time finding $500 extra laying around, without selling things. But this is a very real issue, and it's very complicated, right? Because the state actually hardly charges any property tax at all, but we do regulate the way that a lot of that is done. And so I do think that the real solution here is this, is that, we always have purported to have this balance when it comes to taxes, like the three-legged stool of income, sales, and property tax. But within the property tax system itself, there's another three-legged stool balance between ag, commercial, and residential. Now, what has happened in the past 30 years is that commercial they've gotten a couple of, scotching in a little property tax exemptions for various commercial entities. And I think that those are sort of, it's just kind of like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a little tax exemption. Be pro-business, support this. Well, guess what? Someone has to pay those taxes, and who has the least amount of power, or at least, who doesn't think they have the most amount of power out of those three: agriculture, commercial businesses, and residents? It's you all, it's the residents. And yet you all know how to vote, and I sincerely hope that you will. But the problem is that the property tax issue gets more and more complicated. This is the solution, and out of the elected officials up here, although I'm sure, Mober, if you were in with us, you would have been a yes on this. I just suspect. But we never even got to have a hearing on this, but both in the tax committee and on the floor. And I know a lot of people say that a gut and go amendment is bad. That type of amendment strips the contents of the bill and inserts new contents. But as a member of the minority party, if I didn't do gut and go amendments, I wouldn't be able to get anything done or get a vote on anything. But this is the solution. Basically, what we would do is right now, residential property tax is assessed right now at 11.5%. And if we lower that assessed valuation from 11.5 to 9, it restores balance without making a lot of the commercial businesses angry by taking away their exemptions. But it restores balance and makes it fair again for the people. Property taxes are going to keep going up because we do have a free market. And everyone wants to live here. That's why they're so high in House 19. Everyone wants the best represented. No, I'm kidding. You guys are cool. But in any case, but you do have that higher demand with that type of housing. A cap on valuations, which I think a lot of you have heard that, like, oh, let's cap it at 3% so your valuations can't go up anymore. I mean, I love that as a homeowner who's locked in at 3% for my mortgage. I'm leaving my house in a body bag. I'm not moving. But the thing is that what about these younger families that need to move? It de-incentivizes us from selling or downsizing houses. Like I have a 4-bedroom, dude. It's way too big. It doesn't make sense. But I would be insane to move out of that house because it costs too much to find something new. It's already like that with the market and with chaotic things back east, wreaking havoc on our interest rates, right? Imagine if we put a cap on valuation. So that is what the Senate ran on, although I will note that Senator Holscher opposed it. I think I can say nice stuff about her when she's not here. So that's that. But so basically, again, long story, incredibly long. And I'm sorry, I really care about tax policy, so I'll talk about it forever. But that is what is going on here. You have a very complicated issue. You have attempts to control local governments and say that they can't really do much with their mill levies. But again, they're duly elected. If you don't like them raising your mill levy, then go vote them out. But it's not right to ask me to control everyone. I mean, yes, would we love to be imbued with that type of power? Sure, but that's wrong. We have those different types of situations. So, but in any case, lowering that assessed valuation brings you all savings and restores power to the residents, and that's what we need to do. So, that is certainly one thing that I will continue to push as long as y'all keep sending me back. And that would be a constitutional amendment that would go to a vote of the people. And guess what? Currently, at least, people vote. Farms don't and businesses don't, but you all do. And that's what we need to do to fix it. So, but yeah, tiny, tiny little adorable property tax savings that, might be enough for you to buy, like, I don't know, like a 12-pack of soda once a month. So go get that. But that's about all the relief that we ended up giving you, sadly. Sorry, that was a lot of talk.
I don't really have anything to say. You covered everything.
Yeah, next question.
Yeah, next question.
This is for anybody who wants to answer it. As you meet with your constituents, either one-on-one or in small groups, are there 2 or maybe 3 issues that people are most concerned about and would like you, their representative, to fix, adjust, or otherwise make what the legislature does more user-friendly?
Honestly, a couple of the topics that we've talked about today have basically been the biggest ones on my constituents' minds. Property tax was a big question going through session. Most recently, I've just had a lot of conversations about the cell phone bill. There's a lot of concern in my district as well about, what's going to be happening with the data centers. That's been a lot of what I've been hearing. And so, I've been talking with a lot of different people about that. And I'm really concerned that if we don't break the supermajority next year, and I think this is something that I'm hearing across the board too, is that we're going to be stuck in this position again. And we're just going to keep doing the same things over and over again and not be able to actually provide our constituents out here who are mostly moderate, very, smart-minded individuals with the representation that they deserve, because we're overpowered by people in other areas who certainly have other interests in mind. So I would say that those are the biggest ones. Finding solutions on those, right off the bat is going to be tough, of course, as we're discussing here. This is part of the process. We come out here, we get ideas from you, and then we bring them back, right? I am thankful to be unopposed this year, so I will be going back. So I'm already working on legislation to pre-file or to file right off the bat when we get out there. And I am willing to talk to anybody and work on any type of legislation that I would value and be able to work on to introduce so that we can actually make some real changes that fix things on the ground here. So I think there's a huge variety, but a lot of it has been what we've already discussed today.
When I've been out knocking doors, I'm unopposed. So, I just ask my constituents, I'm just here to, what you have questions or concerns. So first they look a little shell shocked that I'm at their door. Then they look shell shocked that I'm not really asking them for anything. And then what I hear most is like they're concerned about the downfall of democracy. They're like, oh, the world. I can't do a lot about that from my position except encourage people to vote. They're concerned about the constitutional amendment that's on the ballot August 4th and the purity of our courts. Schools are always a big thing. Data centers do come up. And then I think the one that struck me most this week is I had a person who I talked to just 2 years ago. He and his wife were out in their yard doing work, and I stayed too long to talk. And I came back this year, and the wife has dementia, and now they have a home health aide too. That's the only way they're going to be able to keep her in the house. And there's just a lot of things wrong with the system that almost makes it easier to institutionalize your loved ones than to keep them at home. And I mean, that really struck a nerve this week. I mean, he's not going to have time to advocate for anything. He's caring for his wife 24 hours a day, minus the aide was there to help feed her lunch. And those are the things that like I lose sleep over at night.
For me, my constituents, it's property taxes and schools, public education. I mean, those are the two biggest things. I will talk about anything that they want to talk about at the door, absolutely, and it runs the whole gamut. But those are the two biggest things.
Well, I'm going to, again, reiterate the schools. One of the things that's so important, as we've mentioned before, that all 125 House members are up for reelection this year. And there are Democrats in 103 of those 125 districts, which is a record, and it's really important. One of the things that most people don't know is that they've heard over and over that our schools are fully funded for the last 7 years. And that is partially true in that we have a general education funding formula that, because the Supreme Court retained jurisdiction over, the Republicans could not slip in new things and defund the school through the general education formula. We also have a special education formula in statute that requires the state to reimburse 92% of the excess costs for filling IEPs, which are the individual education plan under the IDEA Act. So it's a federal mandate and a moral mandate to provide these services to our students. What the legislature has done since 2011 is drop. That's the last time, by the way, that we have funded special ed at 92%. And what they do is continue to underfund that. And we have dropped down to about 62%. And so I represent Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission Schools, and Blue Valley just nixed their fifth grade strings program because of the cost to implement to backfill the special education funding. And so the entire school finance formula expires in 2027. So this legislature that we are voting in to take office in 2027 is going to rewrite that formula. And I think it is incredibly telling. The Education Finance Task Force has been meeting since the spring of 2025, and they've missed every opportunity and self-imposed deadlines to make recommendations to the legislature. So think about this. A Republican supermajority has failed to mention what it is they would like to do with the school finance formula. It must be terrible because they cannot even discuss it in an election year. And I really think that you need to talk to friends across the state about that. The presumed new Speaker of the House, Chris Croft, House District 8, just gleefully signed on to a Moms for Liberty pledge the other day. And what most people don't know is that the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, when asked how many children she would like to see in public school because of the federal voucher and all the voucher programs, she said 0. I want to get it to 0. And Chris Croft, the presumed new Speaker of the House, just gleefully signed on to their pledge. So that is what I hear. Most of the folks in our districts came to our district and bought houses because of the schools. And so we have a possible speaker who agrees with an organization that wants to get public school attendance to 0.
Thank you for being here today, by the way. I was just wondering if you could talk briefly about the amendment that's on the ballot, the importance of it, especially for you that are running unopposed, that are still door knocking. What confusion is out there about it? Because maybe it's just me, but the ads I'm seeing, I think they're purposely deceiving people. So I just wonder if it's just me, or is that something that really needs some clarity? And again, what will be the repercussions should that pass?
Came out of your committee.
Yep. Yeah. Judiciary for the win here. I spent a lot of time getting educated on this topic over the last year. And I could do a deep dive. In fact, I plan to do a deep dive on this before the election in my newsletter. I have a newsletter that I send out, try to do it once a week, and I plan to go through in a long form, more than you could talk at the door for 30 seconds in sound bites, because that's all people want. I mean, to talk about the history of it. And so just briefly, this started 70 years ago when there was what's called this triple play in the state of Kansas, where the governor who was running again was going to lose, resigned his seat. Lieutenant governor came in and appointed him to the Supreme Court, and everyone was up in arms about this. This made national news. So we moved to a merit-based system, and I will tell you that no state in the country has moved from what is a merit-based system right now, what's called the Missouri Plan, to an election-based system, which is what the constitutional amendment is trying to do. So under the current law, you have a nominating commission of 9 people across the state of Kansas. It is representative of every congressional district in the state of Kansas. Lawyers and non-lawyers alike are on this commission. Anybody that is a member of the Kansas Bar, that is a resident of Kansas, can apply to be a Supreme Court justice through this commission when there's an opening. They will review everything you've done, your life story, talk to everybody you know, read all of your judicial opinions if you're a judge, read all of your law court cases. If you, when you're in law school, they will do deep dives of interviews. Then they will do public interviews that you, as the public, can read, can look in on and find out more about their qualifications and watch them. It is all open to the public. Then they make a recommendation from everybody that has applied, 3 people to nominate to the governor. The governor then selects one of those people to be the next Supreme Court justice or Court of Appeals. So those are the 2 different versions that can go in. So that is the way that it is right now. The way that it would be if this constitutional amendment comes into place is it would be possibly, I'm not certain that it would be partisan, but it would very, very likely be partisan elections, a statewide election where the Supreme Court justice is no longer than just doing the job of a judge, but campaigning across the entire state of Kansas, raising millions, and when I say millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars from outside groups to come in to try to influence the elections. Now, there are rumors, probably very likely rumors, that the reason that this came into being is because of judicial opinions that have come into place, like access to abortion, like funding of education, and how our funding formula is implemented. But the fact of the matter is, regardless of all of that, you have certain skill sets as a campaigner that you may not have as a judge. And the people that are really good campaigners may not be good judges, and vice versa. And what I will say is this: you don't maybe like the current attorney general, who has been recommended for remedial law school classes. Who would probably be number one on the list to run for the next Supreme Court seat were it to become no longer a merit-based system, but a campaign where you could raise unlimited amounts of funds?
Ew, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, the person that can't practice law might interpret your laws.
So what do you recommend voting?
Okay, so in Kansas, we vote no in August. Okay, so I want you to think about two things real quickly. First of all, Ty Masterson, the Senate president, Republican gubernatorial candidate, is on the record saying if we elect our judges, we don't have to fund schools. Okay, that's the first thing. Why did they put it? If this is all about democracy, that's the other side. Oh, you should have a right to vote. And also in the current process, we do vote in the right after they're appointed in the next general election. We vote whether to retain that justice or not, and then every 6 years. So then the question is, why would it be on the August ballot if they're all about democracy? Who votes typically, historically, in August? Generally, we have fewer Democratic candidates, so we rarely have primaries. The unaffiliated swath of voters, which is about 30% of voters across Kansas, are not used to voting in a primary because they don't have a party affiliation. So if they are looking at hopefully 60% of the folks that are not used to voting in a primary, and then even of the, if you will, Republican base, it's typically the most far right. The moderate Republicans show up less in primaries than the far right. So the placement tells you a lot about it too. Go ahead.
I'm a practicing attorney, and you do not want your judges to be political creatures at all. You want your judges to be smart, curmudgeon-y people who aren't afraid to upset me as a litigator before them or an opponent before them. I will point out that Johnson County each county has the option of having merit appointments or partisan elections. Johnson County has merit-based appointments for its judges and has had it for quite a while. And has it been 10 years, 15 years? We've had elections on whether to change it. And each time we overwhelmingly keep our merit-based system. And there's a reason for that. We have a very good judiciary in Johnson County. We have a very well-qualified judiciary in Kansas, and we have an opportunity every 4 years, if something horrible happens, to vote to not retain them. But I hope most of you can't name a single Johnson County judge, and you shouldn't be able to. Most of you probably can't name a single Kansas Supreme Court judge or appellate court judge, and you shouldn't be able to. Maybe you know opinions, but the individual judges shouldn't be part of your opinion, and they shouldn't be looking to you to curry favor for anything. They should be looking at the parties before them in a litigated case and not worried about how their decision is going to affect their electability in 2 years, 4 years, or whatever. And so, no, I would vote no for this, and I would advise you to and call anybody or have them call me, even if I were not running for office.
I just have one quick thing to say about this. Usually you can tell if a constitutional amendment is written with the most important thing in mind, and that is by, is it clear? Is it concise? And do you feel, and I know this is going to sound strange, but go with your instincts, respected by the ballot language? When we had the constitutional amendment 2 years ago in August, the ballot language was full of double negatives. And although I haven't gotten to go to law school, but I did learn a new word. It was called surplusage, which is an overabundance of language that is really by design to confuse. You might notice that that you're starting to see signs that are exactly the same color saying vote no or vote yes. And I think that we all know from our gut if a politician is treating you with the respect that you deserve, or if a political group is. It is also worth noting, and this will be buried in your ballot language, but this doesn't say how these elections will be done. Are they going to be statewide judges? Are they going to be districts? Are they going to be partisan? You know who decides that? Basically, if you vote yes, you are giving the legislature, so whoever's in power, including a governor that may or may not be able to veto, if it's currently the makeup that it is now, then a super minority, right, that may or may not be able to determine things. And so it was left that way by design. So if any politician or political entity is making you feel confused or deceived, then you already know the answer to that question. It's the same thing that I ask myself when I'm reading over a bill. If I am not 100% sure if this bill will basically give the greater good or for Kansans, or if I'm not exactly sure what it does, I either ask clarifying questions, but if someone is trying to pull the wool over my eyes, the answer is no. So this is your opportunity to really follow your gut. And if someone or if that entity is making you feel confused in the way that they're presenting themselves, you know the answer. And that applies for politicians, it applies for amendments, it applies for all things in your civic duty as Kansans. God, I think I just channeled my mother. But, she always talked about her civic duty. So other questions?
Aren't these amendments usually on the November ballot?
It all depends. And so one of the things, so when we as legislators vote, first of all, in order to get something on a constitutional amendment on the ballot, you have to get 2/3 in the House and 2/3 in the Senate to approve. But what we are voting on, you have the bill itself, and within the bill, it will say whether this goes on the August ballot or on the November ballot. Usually, if something is going on the August ballot, that's a constitutional amendment. Do you guys remember back when we used to have our local elections in the spring? So in Kansas, it is in our Constitution that marriage is only between a man and a woman. You know when that amendment was on your ballot? In the spring, I want to say 2004, I believe. So again, I believe that constitutional amendments should only be on the ballot in November, but they are strategically determined. And usually, if it's on the ballot in August, when they want the smallest group of people, then that kind of tells you everything that you need to know. Although that is a risk on their part, because obviously we have massive primaries, which on the Democratic side, which I can't wait for them to be over because they're controversial and I don't want to get involved. But I'm sure that regardless of how those primaries resolve themselves, we will come together and do what needs to be done. But in any case, so when it comes to these constitutional amendments to like the bill, it says when it will be on the ballot, it says what the ballot language will be, so what the people see, and then the bill itself talks a little bit more about implementation. It's worth noting that when, my first 6 years in office, I served as a Republican. I've actually gotten to vote against this one twice. It was in a different iteration in 2014 where it came up. But at the time, there were enough Republicans. There were 10. I was one of them that said no. So the only other one who was there at the time, Shannon Francis, flipped and voted yes. So can't control everyone, I suppose. But in any case, yeah. So when it comes to constitutional amendments, the short answer should be, if it is even on your ballot in August, why? So there you go. Yes.
Do you all have like a 30-second, at the door pitch for explaining the amendment to people that's going over well?
Yes. So usually what I say to people when it comes to the amendment is people are trying to politicize our courts. Our current system has been in place since the 1950s. And I don't believe in the legislature basically trying to remove the enforcers for the laws that we put in place and the enforcers for our Constitution. I take an oath to the Constitution, and the judiciary is supposed to uphold that Constitution. And anyone who's trying to control the judiciary is trying to remove accountability for legislators, and that is wrong. I can even say it shorter. I usually just say vote no, don't politicize our courts. Anyone else? Did you guys want to say anything about the 30 seconds? No.
I can take 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
I will ask people if they know about the amendment, which they are starting to know about it more. They didn't a month ago, but I will say, this is an attempt to politicize our judges. We already have the ability to vote on judges. We vote on their record. And in Wisconsin, Elon Musk dropped in $30 million in a Supreme Court judge race, and that is the last thing we need in Kansas. Other questions?
I have one more. Sorry to keep asking questions. This is about schools and it's not about cell phones or special ed. But I have heard that Kansas has more school districts per person than, any state in the Midwest or Plains. Is that true? And does that cause a lot of expenses that could be used elsewhere?
So it is true. We do have a lot of school districts specifically. So we remember, we've got our size categorization for our schools. So 6A all the way down to 1A. And so there's a district that my great-great-grandfather served in the legislature out in Oberlin, Kansas. So far northwest Kansas. And I had a cousin who lived out there in Quinter. When she passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, yikes, it was very sad. But in any case, the funeral was held at Quinter High School, and you had people coming from all around, right? But the high schools are the center of activity in these areas. And oftentimes, these schools are the number one employer for these small areas. Now, it's an interesting battle, right? As we see, Kansas doesn't necessarily have outmigration leaving the state, but everyone keeps moving to Johnson County. Johnson County's population has exploded exponentially in the past several decades, and a lot of that is because we have a lot of jobs and because we are a healthcare destination. So as people age, they want to be close to their grandkids because that's where their kids are working, and they want to be close to good healthcare. So at first we would say, well, gosh, look at all of these schools. We should consolidate them. I have always been taught in the legislature, you don't say the C word. And that word is consolidation. And the reason is that you are threatening the job, the entertainment center, the community vitality of these areas. And plus, how long do these kids need to be bused to their schools, right? I live in an area where the middle school's across the street from my house, the elementary school's right there, and my kid lives too close to South to be bused. So I don't understand what that's like, but we don't want our kids to have to be sitting on a bus for 300 miles. And moreover, if we try to kill rural public education, guess what? We have a lot of colleagues that are trying to kill public education entirely. And if we start there, that's where you start seeing the dominoes fall. So I will support these schools staying open, even if they're expensive, because every child in Kansas deserves access to public schools, even if it costs money, which it definitely does. But it is a job creator for those areas.
I have a lot of friends in Western Kansas, and that's happening because they have to, instead of the legislature telling them that they need to do it. Like there's one high school in Norton County, there's one high school in Comanche County. Some of these kids are spending 45 minutes to an hour each way on the bus every day because they have to. Comanche County, my kids went to Shawnee Mission West. There are more students at Shawnee Mission West than there are residents of Comanche County. My high school best friend was on the school board when they consolidated. And when they left to go to that, she left to go to that meeting. Her husband said, "Don't make the motion. Don't be the one to make them." She was the one that made the motion to consolidate. There are only 3 towns in that county. In a lot of these places, they're realizing this on their own. The legislature doesn't have to do it for them. They know that they can't afford to maintain 3 school districts in a county with less than 2,000 people.
I did a very quick Google search, so take this all with a grain of salt, because I've never heard the critique that we have more school districts in Kansas than anywhere else. We have about 285 school districts in Kansas. I looked up Nebraska; it's about 250 school districts. I looked up Missouri; it's a little over 500. Now they have about 2.5 times the population that we do, but still, it all seems, in terms of population, it all seems equivalent, at least my very, very quick search of that. But I'm curious about that, and I'll get back to you as I can go to legislative research and ask this question, and I'll get back to you.
That's what I heard many years ago.
Okay.
More questions? Because that's the best part.
Okay.
Thank you. There's no question we need to restore the balance of power here. It's gotten us into a lot of trouble, and it sounds like a very slippery slope going forward. So, looking for those talking points to really unify people. And I live in a world where we talk about gun violence, and you would think we could have a unified legislature that would protect children. But clearly, with some of these things have been voted that were passed, whether it be the phone ban or whatever, we don't have unity there. We know the number one problem, or a lot of people are speaking about, is taxes, right, in schools. Again, pulling people together. But what I've noticed across the nation is that these data centers, unlike all these other topics, seem to be unifying people both on the right and the left. It's remarkable. And of course, the dangers with that are multiple, fivefold, sixfold, it's crazy. So, as somebody who wants to be helping all of you all to get reelected and others so we can restore balance and power, is there a talking point that you suggest that we take, whether it's phone banking or as we're door knocking, that talks about that, about these data centers? Because it does seem to be having an effect. Is there anything we know that's coming up in Kansas, or what you've heard or whatever? Because it feels very promising that we might finally have a topic that might get people to pay attention and possibly think beyond their party.
Friend. I think that's a really good point. I don't know that there is a unifying talking point at this juncture, because we are just finding out how broadly bipartisan the distrust for this rapidly moving process has become. And I don't know, I've heard from a lot of different people, a lot of different reasons why they don't like them. So I think that that's also, part of the trouble. You can't really find a unifying thing on it if everybody dislikes them for different reasons. But I think that the important thing that we're talking about here with the distrust and the pushback against data centers is that it is bipartisan. It is community wide. I think a lot of the trouble, as you may have seen in some of the recent articles that came out, is that there's a wedge between labor and the legislature at this point, specifically with some of the Democrats on the legislature, myself included. I have always been open about the fact that I do not support hyperscale AI data centers anywhere. I understand that there are differences. There are some smaller ones that don't make as much of an impact environmentally or, on the communities that they're in. I think that there's one in Lenexa that Mayor Sayers was just recently talking about that I'd be interested in taking a look at. But all that to say, we need the jobs that come with the data centers, absolutely. And I think that that's where we're kind of butting heads with labor on. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're protecting our communities, we're protecting our environment. We aren't giving into, a surveillance state. We don't know what these data centers are really going to be used for, nor why we all of a sudden need them so badly in every single corner of every single community. And there's a lot of, mistrust there. And we don't have any guarantees that we're going to be able to offer prevailing wage or, make sure that we are only hiring union labor for these positions, right, to build these centers. We don't have that guarantee either. I absolutely did not vote for the data center bill. I will not support that whatsoever. But I think that you have a really good point. I think that, however, right now at this juncture, what we need to be doing is we need to be coming together, those of us who do not support these data centers, and educating ourselves on what they are so that we are more informed when we go out and we say, hey, we don't support these, so that we can say why. I've been offered to go tour a couple recently. I think I'm going to take them up on that. More fuel for my fire, right? But it's true that this is very bipartisan. I'm very hopeful about that. I speak with a lot of my Republican colleagues on this, and this is one of the things that we really agree on. As a progressive in the legislature, it's hard to find things like that sometimes, right? But this is something that we certainly agree on, that we need to slow down, that we need to dial it back, that maybe we do need to entertain, thoughts of a moratorium until we can really get this figured out. But absolutely regulations and guidelines, absolutely figuring out why we need so many right now, absolutely figuring out how much this is going to cost us as communities, environmentally and monetarily, what it's going to do in the future. Are these really only going to last 3 to 5 years, and then what? There are too many questions. There aren't enough answers. But that's, you're on the right path there. And this is something that I've been doing behind the scenes quite a bit of for several months, is talking to a large group of different legislators on both sides of the aisle about what we may be able to do to slow down data centers, or at least find out what we can do to make sure that our communities and our environment and our future generations are safe, and we avoid the impending surveillance state.
So it's my understanding that your underlying question was about where do we find unifying issues and what are the unifying issues. You mentioned data centers as one of those, but I have always found that there is one unifying issue, or really two, that we have, and that is, number one, every single one of us, we have to eat. We have to have a place to live. We have to just live life in general. And affordability is the number one unifying issue that I have found. I represent a pretty fancy part of Kansas, and I can tell you that regardless of how data center policy goes in the state, they're not letting that happen in Prairie Village, right? They're not letting that happen in Old Leawood. So my district knows that data centers are not going to affect them the same way that it will affect rural areas. But what is happening is that every single person in my legislative district, whether it's in the areas that have Section 8 housing, or whether it's in the areas where I'm walking half a mile up to the chateau to knock on their door, every single one of them have seen their costs going up exponentially. And every single one of them, Republicans and Democrats alike, are concerned about the preservation of democracy and the way that elected officials handle power. It really does boil down to respecting Kansans. You're respecting them by the way that we conduct ourselves when it comes to our power that you all give us, the way that we would uphold our oath. And it's respecting the fact that individuals are the ones that hold all of this in their hands, especially it's individuals that are bearing these higher costs. If you've got an older parent, you're paying more for that caregiving. If you have a child, you're paying more for that caregiving than you would have a generation back. You're paying an exorbitant amount of money for food and gas. And a lot of those are at federal issues. But guess what? At the state level, the questions you should be asking your legislators or legislators to be is, how are you making my life more affordable? And how are you respecting democracy and the democratic process? And that is an inherently bipartisan issue, and it doesn't have any of the rural-urban divides. Everyone is being affected by those two things.
Anybody?
I think Representative Clayton is right on track. I think schools are another thing we can unify. I will say I cannot support data centers as a member of the Water Committee until I have a much clearer picture. And that's the concern I actually hear more. It's like, what about the water? And I've heard some, local mayors say, they have to follow our zoning, stay out of our business. Does the zoning cover water usage and water pollution? I've not been able to find that it does. So that's a concern. I do think we need to take a pause and get some regulations. And if if a small town decides the 30 permanent jobs that this data center generates is a plus for their community, that's great. That's their issue. They need to work that out. Is there going to be a data center in my district? Probably not. Although now that I'm like going down, I can see one big swath of open land. Or I don't know. But schools are the bread and butter of my district, and they are a key to economic success in the future. They're just the key to everything. So I think we can always unite on that. Denise.
Are we specifically talking about the large hyperscale ones? Because there are data centers everywhere. There are
Yeah.
I used to work for a company that we had a room that was just full of servers. That was our data center. Those things exist everywhere. And so a blanket ban on data centers, I mean, we all use the cloud, we all use Google, we have Alexas, we do all these things. That data has to be stored somewhere. So I think we have to make sure that we are looking at the nuance of this and not just a blanket ban on all of this stuff, because we all use it every day.
Yeah, Denise, I think that's a really good point. And I think that that's one of the things that I was talking about, that I've been working, kind of with this bipartisan coalition. We're kind of underground, but whatever. About, because there are so many nuances to it, right? I think we don't want to do a blanket ban, but we need to really be careful about what we're doing. And right now what we have is like a blanket do whatever you want kind of thing. And that's not right either, right? So we really, we do recognize the nuance, I think, on both sides of the aisle. And we all, also our community members that we're hearing from across the state recognize the differences as well. Water is a really important issue. Costs going up is a really important issue. I think that there are so many issues that involve data centers at this point that's why we need to slow down. We need to, obviously we need something, right? But so many at once all over the place is also not the right answer. And so, yeah, we just need to slow down and we need to work together. And unfortunately, we're still working on, unifying statements and how we do this. But because it is so very nuanced and the issues affect different communities differently, we really have to be careful about it.
Legislature to provide a guideline for communities to use, like if you are allowing a hyperscale data center, you need to outline the water issues. These are the kind of safeguards you need for your community, for safety, for water, for all these things. Is it possible for the legislature to do something to provide guidelines that communities have to look at?
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think that that's what we mean by regulations and guardrails, right? I mean, isn't that what our job is? But we haven't gotten there yet, So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something we all look forward to doing. And that's why we're working like this, behind the scenes to see what we can get started.
You hit on the whole distrust thing, because there's a lot of nuance and behind the scenes and their cover-ups as to who really is behind it and
Right.
what their all-time goals. Is that transparency?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
And we don't even know it either. And that's the thing.
That's probably first and foremost
Yeah.
in all of these guidelines, is to truly understand the impacts.
Yeah.
Who's behind it, where it's going,
Right.
the electrical, draw on the grid, let's say. That's a big issue,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
other people's, they're picking up those costs. The communities are picking up those costs, the ongoing hum, the
Mhm.
environmental impacts, emotionally, physically.
Well, and
surging on the.
in addition to that, we are, getting new information slowly but surely about the health impacts it can have on individuals long term and communities in West Virginia and things like that, where these have been around for quite some time. And so we're finally getting those results in, and they're pretty scary in some cases. So yeah, and absolutely transparency is number one. I don't think we are getting a lot of that ourselves either as lawmakers, and that's the unfortunate part. But we're searching for it, and we're working with partners who are, in support of data centers and those who are not, to try to figure out where we can land on this and how to best serve our communities. I think while being transparent and also making sure that, we're preserving water resources, we're preserving energy resources, we're preserving land resources for generations to come, and making sure that we also take care of the health needs and the societal needs of everyone else as well. I just think this is moving too fast for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call time.
Yeah.
This room is reserved by somebody else at 10:45. It is also door knocking season, and it's only getting hotter. So, our next town hall will move over to Representative Poskin's area. Will be August 1st at the Leawood Pioneer Library. I'll remind you, early voting in person starts a week from today. If you were planning to early vote here, my Oak Park friends, you will not. Nor will you be voting at the Central Resource Library, nor will you be voting at JCCC early. You will have to find a further away site to vote early in person. But I really encourage you to research the issues, research the candidates, and get out and vote. We can vote our way out of this mess.